Good God. Only what? Maybe 4,000 ton left, something like that.
Bloody hell. Really?
Yeah. Another couple of months of work, we'll be gone.
You poor old bugger. Oh.
She's not Fim anymore.
No, she bloody isn't, but she never bloody deserved this, that's for sure. No way. No way. God almighty, no, thank you. Let the poor old bugger go with some dignity and pull the bloody plug out, I'll never know. I mean, the old girl was worn out, she was tired, and she was at the end of her life, but to see this is bloody heartbreaking. Things over there where kids literally work their guts out to get her clean and sparkling. I just left her and looked back along the jetty, and there she was in sort of all her bloody splendour, like. For what she did for England, and the country, she didn't deserve this. I don't think, anyway. You remember everything, you know. You can hear a tannoy blaring out, and you see little Wilf performing, and you remember in bad weather, you remember aircraft landing on, and oh, there's a million memories.
Here we are, in the Coast Guard now. Don't know what the others are doing, though. God blimey. Let's go, Sam.
How'd you find these seats?
Excellent. Very good. Yeah,
I was flag officer Portsmouth for about 2.5 years.
okay. All right.
Now I'm the director and secretary of the Royal National Lifeboat Institution. It's fair to say that this job is nothing like running the Ark Royal, but the nice thing about it is that it's still very much to do with the sea. One of the interesting things is that we now have far more lifeboats than there are ships in the Navy, so this is a good deal, I always think, sort of bigger job than the Navy now.
Well, I missed the Navy. It was a hell of a break for me after nearly 24 years to step foot in Civvy Street and sort of stand up on my own. I found it very hard.
Off for a cap. On the 2nd of March, without reasonable excuse, did fail to attend the muster of both watches of the flight deck party to 800 muster it was his duty to attend. Do you understand the charge?
Sir?
How do you plead?
Guilty. You lose the discipline, I think. You lose that security of the discipline, your mates, your regular income. I think you lose a little bit of dignity as well because you're not wearing that uniform anymore. In a way, I suppose we were spoiled, mollycoddled for a few years, well looked after. Then you come outside, it's very hard to adjust to Civvy Street. I had a holiday in Florida. I took my parents and mother and father to Florida for a month, to the West Coast, went to Tampa, a little place called Weeki Wachee, and my wife and her daughter, we all went for a vacation, you know.
Thanks, sir.
I came back from there and I had 6 weeks on the go, and then I got a job. I couldn't handle the work, I couldn't handle the traveling that I had to do backwards and forwards. Especially for an older man like me, to face the rigours of the modern world. Eventually we split up, we got a divorce. I couldn't really handle a lot of the personal things involved with a divorce. I'd made threatening remarks to her and her new man, you know, which was a foolish thing for me to do. But there again, I was 30 miles away and it was over the telephone, and I'd had a beer. And they sent me away to Winchester for 3 weeks for reports. And I got a piece of paper to prove that I'm sane, if an ex-Matlow can be sane, you know. And that knocked a hole in me, and it straightened me out quite a little bit, actually. And I thought, well, I ain't going to go through this again. And basically, I think my character wasn't quite strong enough, and Rose, my ex-wife, perhaps, that when I wanted to lean on her shoulder and she wanted to lean on mine, we weren't, I wasn't man enough to explain to her that I needed a little bit of help.
Twinks were a pain in the butt, but when the chips were down, Twinks came up trumps. You know, he was one of these guys, exasperating one minute, and yet when you wanted him for something and say, right, you know, this is it, he was there. And it was the same with most of the kids, and most of the officers and men were the same. I mean, you got the medical officer, old Joni, and Bernard Marshall, the padre. They're the type of people that make a ship.
Guard! Hold! Into line! Left! Turn!
I'm now the chaplain of HMS Drake and the coordinating chaplain for all Royal Naval chaplains in the Western area. I can have a very beautiful church to look after, and it also means, as the Church of England has rural deaneries, so in the Navy I am sort of the rural dean to all the chaplains that I'm a mini father in God to, some ashore, and all the chaplains who are seagoing and operate from Devonport. Now, we fix the dates for the rest of the year, so everybody ought to be able to get them in their diary and make... One of the facts that you've got to face is if you are totally exposed by television, the price that the individual is going to pay for speaking forthrightly, allowing every nook and cranny of his life to be seen, is that when the post-mortem is done, if you've been a slightly controversial character at all, you're bound to be left with a slight feeling of singed fingers, to put it in picture language, aren't you? $4,000 question is, how can you be a chaplain in the Navy on the assumptions all Christians are pacifists? Because I think it was controversial in the quotation of sailors' idiomatic language coming out of the screen with Zap, which caused an emotional reaction with a tremendous number of people who didn't listen, perhaps, to the ensuing development of the argument.
It is not right that any questions of immorality or indecency or greed should even be mentioned among you, nor is it fitting for you to use obscene, foolish, or dirty words.
But most sailors use this bad language in an idiomatic fashion to express their gut feeling. And if you restrict their use of bad language, then it seems to me their true emotional state will never properly register because it's so much part of their life. I do not mind using their language because it seems to me that I can make a point to them. I can make the distinction between blasphemy and swearing. Swearing is merely ignorance of the English language. If one turns around to me and says, Jesus wept, Padre, then I can make the point that they are really upsetting me, that they are using the name of someone that I love in an offensive way, and it sort of sticks in my gullet. I mean, it was balanced out. Obviously, the people that were anti hearing me being frank about the life and the language of Ark Royal, that's what happened first, because that's the nature of it, isn't it? If something fires you up and you're anti it, you leap into print. The great thing for me was the number of people who, in slower time, took the trouble to write and say, thank heaven somebody has spoken frankly and honestly about what the situation is.
He made a point, and the point was that he became a sailor, and by becoming a sailor, he was able to communicate with the sailors. And what's more, Bernard obtained the trust of the men. If you don't get their respect and trust, you might as well put your coat on and go home. You're never going to get anywhere with a sailor unless he trusts you. And Bernard earned that trust, and he was marvellous.
Leslie Vernon, will you have this woman to be your wife, to live together in a holy marriage? Will you...
We got divorced after about 2.5 years. We were working different times, and when we saw each other, we just couldn't agree on things and seemed to sort things out, you know. I'm living with a lady now. She's just got a divorce. She got 4 girls of her own from her first marriage and one of mine, a little girl who's just turned 1 year old.
Ta.
Oh, you miss all the sunshine in the swimming pool. That was absolutely superb. Just get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go and dive in the swimming pool, you know. I suppose to me it was living fantasy, really. You get out there and it was just great. You know, I thought it would have lasted longer than it did. It was a dream life. I could do whatever I wanted to then, you know. So, of course, I was off skip-free. And really, it wasn't like being married at all, not really, because there I was exploring a whole new land, and there she was trying to be a wife, and I wasn't there, you know what I mean?
It's a bit strange, you know, to see him get married on the television again, but it doesn't really bother me. It didn't have a dawn on me that, you know, he'd come back to England and I'd sort of meet up with him and we'd start living together and eventually marry. I didn't ever think that. I thought, oh, he got a life in America and that was it, sort of thing.
Well, I started butchering after I left school in 1968. And I was a butcher till I was about 18, until I joined the Navy. And then I came back and I took butchering back up, which is about 3 years ago. It seems strange that you've got to go right around the world a couple of times, or a time and a half or so, before you marry the girl next door, more or less. But I'm happy to say that that's what I've done, and I've settled down and I've found what I've wanted.
Ah, come on then. Oh.
When he's coming there for the first time, he's obviously very nervous, understandably so. He's heard all the hairy stories of people crashing on the deck and so forth.
And he's a new guy, so he's worth watching.
You're very slow, monsieur.
Bolt on board at full power. Bolt up!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome aboard this Britannia Flight 126 Alpha to Tenerife. Your captain today is Alan Gibson.
Well, I came to the ship having had 8.5 years of flying with the Air Force from runways 1.5 miles long, and there was this postage stamp offered to me. I'd heard the stories from experienced people that on making the approach to the ship, at the end of the ship there was invariably a little bit of sink. So as I was making my approaches, I was putting on a little bit of power, but unfortunately the day I was there was no sink forming. So the power was just enough to lift me over the top of these 4 wires, and I missed and had to keep trying to get the approach right.
I was there to tell you that was a much better approach, and the next time just keep on the lead board and keep it coming down. It's not really a landing. It's more a controlled arrival. You're coming down to a deck which is not very long. It's something like 150 feet as opposed to something like 3,000 yards of runway. You're coming in at 160 miles an hour. And if you don't get within 2 knots of the landing speed and within about 10 feet, then you'll miss. Keith, if he bolts this time, I think he'll send him to orbit. And 6, 7 approaches now.
Now, this is better than the last 2.
The final attempt at landing, it was absolutely amazing. The airplane coming to a really shuddering halt.
He's on.
I just had no idea really what was going on. In fact, I sat there with the engines virtually on full power for several seconds before I was finally convinced that we'd actually come to a halt.
No, I'm on. Put it that way.
I think my squadron commander was aware of the cameras, and he gave me a very patronising debrief.
Approaches. But anyway, the LSO debriefed you, but it was no problems, no problems.
Very shaken by how.
And then you packed up and went, and then the real debrief started. And it bore not much resemblance to the nice, pleasant, avuncular chat he was giving me at the time.
Yes, of course one was conscious of you being there. There was much more to it than whatever it was, episode 2, I think it was, I'm not sure. We gave a lot heavier debriefing after you'd left. But wouldn't that be natural, I would tend to say.
I did another 83 flights from the deck during the next 6 months or so. I only ever missed the wires once out of a total of 83, so obviously got them all out of my system right at the beginning.
It was 2 days before I was due to leave, and all my happy handlers, as I used to call them, they'd cleared lower deck and they were there and presented me with a painting. In fact, the painting was almost not quite dry when they presented it to me, you know, but I had tears in my eyes. I couldn't help it, you know, and a lump in my throat to think that they'd gone to all that trouble. And I think it's got on there to Uncle Tom from all handlers past and present. It was a terrific feeling, you know, to think that they thought that about me and to give me this sort of thing.
Okay, turn left early. Now come forward 5 yards. Forward 5 yards. Easy, left and forward.
Although he has a stiff wrist, still has in fact returned to normal. And then if I've discharged him to your care, full stop, perhaps you would like to contact us about him. You will see him again, full stop. Yours sincerely.
Rather less dramatic situation than it was on episode 3, Philip.
Oh yeah, yes, it was rather, wasn't it? Yeah, that was very dramatic. And of course it was seen to be dramatic as well. That was the other thing. Obviously a lot of rescues such as that go on, but of course they're not always filmed with the man on the spot as you were on that occasion. And I think a lot of service personnel involved in that kind of situation, such as flight crews, winchmen, etc., don't really like all that much having observers around. One is a secret of the crew that was with us, the BBC crew, that fitted in very well as a group of personalities. They also were professional in their conduct. If they hadn't fitted in, then I think we might have had a very different result.
I just went down to do the job, you know, it was a straightforward, put the guy in the stretcher and winch him back up again.
To me, it was just a sort of standard sort of rescue, because having done quite a few rescues, and a lot more, sort of, more horrendous rescues than that. That one, it wasn't actually a rescue, it started off as a normal transfer, and then it just went wrong. And that's when you've got to know what you're doing.
I think our seniors obviously want to see that the thing is shown to be done correctly, but whatever respects, whether it's arming up a helicopter or swabbing a deck or whatever. But it's easy when you're sitting watching something in isolation up in the MOD to pick on small items which you would like to have been better. But my argument to that is, well, the secret of that particular series' success was the naturalness of the people. And there was no way, should we have altered our behaviour, our way of life, to make it look better, because that'd be wrong. A few words were said, I gathered, but I only heard second-hand about my comment at the end of the interview, which is when I disappeared off into the sunset.
I'm going to have a fag. You coming?
And not only did I feel like a cigarette, I felt like a drink, as I swept most of it off into the goon suit. I remember distinctly turning back as I walked off and seeing John Purdy looking very, very pleased and with his thumbs up like this. Obviously, he'd already said that that was going to be the end of the final exit line for that particular episode, which sadly it was in some respects. I did go up smoking for some time recently, I may add.
Down this passageway here, through the blue doors at the bottom and up the stairs. Duty section, the bottom end here, the petty officer down the bottom there. Resettlement officer, he's the man down through those blue double doors down there.
Well, today I'm leaving the Navy and I've got to go around and get all these stamped. And once I've got them all stamped, I'm a mister. And enjoy life in Civil Street.
Come on here. Just listen to that bloody row over there. Hey, hello you winkers. It's Wilf here. Well, as you can see, nothing much changed. Still getting pissed. Still singing Baldy songs. Just hark at him over there. Oh, blimey, I don't know.
I never will play the wild rover no more.
What a life, eh? How you lot going anyway? Still sending the old letters? They had stacks of dirty letters, you know. Wouldn't believe them. Even had one from a puffer. Didn't answer it, though.
My parents confess what I've done. and I lost them to pardon the prodigal son.
We left the Ark Royal and was recommended for the British Empire Medal. We both got one of those as well, didn't we, mate? Hey.
For services to morale, which was really smashing. It was nice to know that somebody had thought great, because it was hard work writing the shows, getting it all together, and but of course I had a good audience with the lads on the Ark Royal.
Oh, Roger, many thanks for the check. I've been with the Coast Guard just coming up to 3 years now. A certain amount of reasons I left the Navy. I got a little bit fed up with the routine work, sleeping and living in the same compartment with another 20 guys, very close. You just get a little bit cheesed off with it, that's all. Got a nice house now, settled into the job. Still not married. Yeah, the world's a lot different outside. It was quite a shock, I can tell you. There's a lot of responsibilities looking after yourself when you've got to consider food, electricity, and all the other bills that come in. In the Navy, all that's taken care of for you.
I must have been hit by the aviation bug in Ark Royal, and certainly when I went to my next ship, I decided that I would like to fly. I'm now a flight commander of a frigate, HMS Hermione. It's all changed now.
Not many of my contemporaries would have the chance to give an order which swings a 50,000-ton carrier.
5, starboard 5.
But unfortunately, one knows that as soon as anything happens, one is going to have to hand over to the Officer Watch 1.
Roger, concur.
I'm looking forward to the day when I get the responsibility.
Well, I'm afraid it's gone full circle now. I've probably got more responsibility than I can handle. But certainly, responsibility, the Navy is very good at applying it in progressive stages. Right now, I'm responsible for the aircraft flight on board, which consists of 2 aircraft officers and 7 maintainers. And it's a small little department and performs a vital function in the ship's weapon systems. In the Falklands, I was observer of HMS Antrim flights Wessex 3, which was an anti-submarine helicopter, and we were lucky enough to detect the Argentine submarine Santa Fe on radar and depth charge him and leave him fairly crippled. I pushed the button. Again, very motivating. It's the sort of thing one joins for, but one never dreams that one will actually get involved. And it's very nice when you're an anti-submarine observer to actually have a submarine between your sights and actually have the weapons to deal with him. Absolutely terrific. I mean, luckily nobody was killed in the submarine, but it was one more out of the game, luckily.
One wasn't always conscious of the way in which the camera work was done, or indeed when the camera was actually rolling. So I think the series actually caught us sometimes when we were unawares. A couple of occasions I said a couple of things I probably wouldn't have said had I known the cameras were rolling. I remember teaching some sailors O-level English, and I happened to mention that some of the best descriptive prose in the English language today was contained in the letters page of Mayfair. And this caused a laugh at the time. And funnily enough, the following month, Mayfair, which is not a magazine I take regularly, or if at all, published an editorial which my friends gleefully showed me, saying how much they thanked this young officer under training for actually giving them a mention on this programme that had been on the television. And who were they to argue?
Basic man hasn't changed. He's still the sailor he always has been. They've got more sophisticated. They want something better. You know, they want videos, they want better staging, they want a better lighting, they want a better service. And, you know, we think we provide it now.
The series was remarkably honest, but then it was almost a sort of everyday story of country folk.
in a funny sort of way. It was just that. It was life as 2,500 men on board a ship happened to live, happened to go for runs ashore around the world.
I think there might be regret that it was on celluloid and preserved for posterity and can be looked at, dissected and analysed time and time again. That's perhaps the regret, that one has got to live with it being on permanent record.
You were dragged along the jetty, carried up the brow, taken to the sick bay.
No, I don't regret being in it, but I didn't think I was going to play such a big part. We didn't know you guys were there half the time, so some of the things that went on and were said, we didn't realise would be on film anyhow. But I don't mind, anyhow, I don't mind. It was life and it was true, so who's worried? I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. I thought it was a good phase of my life.
Well, I went to a party with my Uncle Jim, when somebody threw a tomato at him. Tomatoes don't hurt me, he said with a grin. This bugger did, it was still in the tin, and it's not a never.
These people that made ships, I mean, she's just a lump of metal, she always was, but what's going through my mind now is all the kids and all the things that happen. I mean, they'll cut her open one day, I'll be the same, but they'll never take the memories away, not ever.
Never! No, they never, no more will I play the one over. Oh, never, no more. I feel